The truck had barely stopped when she came running out, waving her clipboard like it was a weapon. "You can't park that here," she yelled, pointing straight at the driver who was unloading my delivery. I rushed out from the garage, still holding my coffee, trying to make sense of the chaos. The delivery guy looked confused, glancing between me and her. "Ma'am, this order says it's for this address," he said calmly. She snatched the paper from his hand, glanced at it for half a second, and then barked, "This property is under HOA inspection. Nothing comes in or out without approval." I froze. That box wasn't just any package, it was a custom medical machine for my son, who needed it tonight. "That's my delivery," I said firmly, stepping closer. But she blocked my path like a guard dog. "Not anymore," she said coldly. "We can't allow unauthorized medical devices. HOA rules." Before I could react, she waved to a man in a golf cart, another HOA board member, and they both lifted the box from the truck bed. The driver looked helpless. "Sir, I don't want trouble," he whispered, climbing back into his truck. I stood there watching as they rolled my son's lifeline across the street like it was contraband. My pulse pounded in my ears. "You can't take that," I shouted. She turned back with that smug grin, the one I'd seen too many times before. "Watch me," she said. Then she slammed her gate and disappeared inside her house with the box. I wanted to call the cops, but something told me she'd already planned for that. She always did. I dialed 911 anyway, hands shaking. The operator's calm voice barely cut through the anger in my chest. "Yes, my neighbor just stole a medical delivery from my property," I said, pacing the driveway. Within minutes, a patrol car pulled up. But when the officer stepped out, my stomach dropped. Karen was already there, smiling sweetly beside him, holding a folder like she was his supervisor. "Officer, I told him this equipment violates HOA safety codes," she said, tilting her head with fake concern. "He keeps bringing in unregistered machinery. We're just trying to protect the neighborhood." The officer turned to me, hesitant. "Sir, do you have proof this belongs to you?" I opened my phone, showing the email confirmation, the invoice, everything. But Karen laughed softly, shaking her head. "That's photoshopped. He's been causing issues for months. He doesn't even own this house. He rents and he's behind on payments." That was a lie, a bold one. But she said it with such confidence that for a second, even the officer looked unsure. "Ma'am," I said through gritted teeth, "that machine is for my son's treatment. He's inside right now. He needs it tonight." Her expression didn't change. "Then maybe you should have followed the rules." The officer sighed. "Sir, until we sort this out, maybe it's best to leave the equipment with her for now." I couldn't believe it. She had just stolen my child's medical gear, and somehow I was the one being lectured. The officer took her word over mine just like she wanted. When they left, she looked right at me and said quietly, "Next time, don't mess with the HOA." She didn't know. I wasn't just another homeowner. I used to be a detective. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat by my son's bedside, listening to his shallow breathing while replaying her smirk in my head. Every second counted, and she had taken the one thing that could help him. My hands itched to kick down her door, but I knew better. People like her, self-righteous, untouchable in their little kingdom of HOA rules, they always slip when they think they've won. By morning, I had a plan. I pulled out my old case files, my badge tucked away in a drawer, and the small camera I used for undercover work. The badge was expired, but the instincts weren't. I walked past her house, pretending to take out the trash when I saw through her window my son's medical unit sitting in her living room, next to her wine rack like some stolen trophy. I snapped a photo, then another. She must have seen me from inside because her curtain twitched. Moments later, she stormed out in her robe. "What are you doing?" she barked. "Taking pictures," I said evenly. "That's stolen property." She laughed, that dry, arrogant laugh that made my blood boil. "You think anyone's gonna believe you? You're a tenant, not an owner. You have no rights here." Her words hit like a slap, but I didn't flinch. "We'll see about that." She leaned in closer. "If you don't leave, I'll call the police again. And next time, I'll tell them you threatened me." I stepped back slowly, pretending to back down. But inside, I was already building my case. She'd crossed a line she couldn't walk back from. As she turned to go inside, I caught sight of something. An HOA letterhead on her counter, but the seal was off. It looked fake. My instincts kicked in hard. This wasn't just Karen being petty. She was running a scam. I spent the next day quietly digging. Every file, every message from the HOA group chat. She controlled it all. She wasn't just enforcing rules. She was inventing them. Fake violations, fake fines, and now fake authority. When I checked the HOA's official database, her name wasn't even listed as a board member. She'd forged her way into power. That night I walked over to the community office, lights off, doors locked. But through the glass I saw stacks of envelopes, each stamped with the same phony seal I'd seen on her counter. She'd been sending fake notices to half the neighborhood, collecting fees that went straight into her personal account. I took photos of everything, knowing one thing for sure: she'd picked the wrong person to mess with. As I turned to leave, headlights flashed behind me. Karen's SUV screeched to a stop. "Looking for something?" she called out, stepping out with that same smug grin. "You know, it's illegal to snoop around HOA property." "This isn't your property," I said, sliding my phone into my pocket. She walked closer, lowering her voice. "You think you're clever, huh? Taking pictures, pretending you know the law. Let me give you some advice. Drop it. Because if you don't, I'll make sure your lease is terminated by the end of the week." I stared at her for a long moment, then smiled slightly. "Karen, you really don't know who you're talking to." Her eyes narrowed. "And who exactly are you?" I took a slow step forward, my tone calm but sharp. "Someone who used to put people like you behind bars." For the first time, her confidence cracked. She didn't say another word, just turned, slammed her door, and sped off into the night. I watched her taillights fade, my phone buzzing in my hand. A message popped up from a contact I hadn't called in years. "Still playing detective, huh? You want me to run her name?" I typed back one word: "Yes." By morning, my old contact had sent everything I needed. Karen's real name wasn't even Karen, it was Lydia Parks, and she had a record. 2 counts of fraud, 1 pending investigation for identity theft, and a restraining order from a previous neighborhood where she pulled the same HOA scam. She moved here, changed her name, and started over like nothing happened. I stared at the file, stunned. She wasn't just power-hungry. She was a professional con artist. And now she had my son's medical equipment sitting in her house like a trophy. That was it. I called the delivery company and got the tracking data from the package, proof it was dropped off at my address. Then I texted a buddy still on the force. "Need a favor. Quiet visit. Bring your badge." That evening, I watched from my porch as Karen hosted her little HOA meeting. A few neighbors sat on her lawn chairs while she passed out fake citations like candy. "We're raising community standards," she said proudly. Everyone nodded, too afraid to question her. Then I heard the sirens. 2 squad cars rolled in, lights flashing. Karen froze mid-sentence. My friend, Detective Harris, stepped out. He spotted me, gave a small nod, then turned to her. "Ma'am, we received a report of stolen medical equipment on this property." Karen blinked fast. "That's absurd. I'm the HOA president." Harris cut her off. "No, ma'am. You're not even on record with the HOA. Step aside, please." Her face turned pale. "You can't come in here without a warrant," she snapped. He smiled slightly. "We don't need one. The item is visible through your window." I could see the panic build in her eyes. "This is a mistake," she stammered. He forged those documents." Harris turned toward me. "Sir, can you confirm this is your delivery?" "Yes," I said, my voice steady. "It's for my son's treatment." And she took it from my driveway. Karen tried to laugh, but her voice cracked. "This is harassment. I'll sue all of you." That's when Harris said it, the line that shut everything down. "Ma'am, you're under arrest for grand theft and impersonating an HOA official." Her smile vanished completely. The moment they cuffed her, the whole street went silent. The same neighbors who used to nod nervously at her now stepped out onto their porches, whispering. For the first time, she wasn't the one in control. Harris read her rights while she shouted over him. "You don't understand. I run this neighborhood." "No, ma'am," he said calmly. "You just ran out of luck." As they led her to the car, one of her fake board members, the guy with the golf cart, tried to sneak away. Harris stopped him too. "Sir, don't move. We'll need to ask you a few questions about those forged letters." His face turned white. He sat down on the curb like his legs had given out. The paramedics I'd called earlier arrived soon after with my son's replacement unit. When they rolled it into my living room, I finally exhaled. My boy smiled weakly from the couch. "Is she gone, Dad?" he asked. "Yeah, buddy," I said softly. "She's gone." Outside, the flashing lights reflected off Karen's window, the same one where my equipment had sat the night before. It felt poetic, like the truth itself was shining right back at her. I stood there for a long time watching them drive her away. Just before the car turned the corner, she twisted around and glared at me through the window. "You think this is over?" she hissed. "You'll regret this." I didn't even blink. "I already did," I said quietly. "Now it's your turn." My neighbor, Mrs. Lopez, stepped up beside me holding her phone. "She fined me for my mailbox last week," she said. "Can I send this video to the HOA board?" "Send it to the news," I replied. By midnight, the clip was everywhere. Fake HOA president arrested for grand theft in gated community. But something about the way she'd said, "You'll regret this," stuck in my head. Because Lydia, didn't strike me as the kind of person who accepted defeat quietly. The next morning, I woke up to 3 missed calls from Detective Harris. My stomach dropped before I even hit redial. "She made bail," he said flatly. "Posted it within the hour." I glanced out the window, half expecting to see her SUV back in its usual spot. It wasn't there, but a small white envelope was taped to my mailbox. No name, just a single word scrawled across the front. Ticking. I tore it open. Inside was a photo, my son's school, taken from across the street. My hands clenched before my brain even caught up. She was out and she wanted me to know she still had reach. I called Harris again. "You told me she's under restriction." "She is," he said. "But intimidation's hard to prove without direct contact." I hung up, pacing the porch, fury building in my chest. She wanted a war of fear? She'd picked the wrong man for that. That evening, I installed new cameras. High definition, motion activated, every angle covered. Then I sent Harris all the footage from the last few weeks, including the one that showed her stealing the delivery, forging signatures, and staging fake HOA inspections. He called back an hour later. "This is gold. The DA's gonna love it." But before we could push charges further, my son called out from the living room, his voice trembling. "Dad, the lights outside just turned on." I ran to the window. Her SUV was parked across the street again, headlights off, engine running. I could barely make out her face in the glow of the dashboard. She wasn't smiling this time, just staring. Then she lifted her phone and aimed it straight at my house like she was recording me. I hit record on my own camera and whispered, "You wanted a show, Karen?" "You got one." I dialed Harris again. "She's back. And this time I've got her live on camera." He sighed. "Keep her there. Don't engage. I'm on my way." But I didn't wait. Not when my family was involved. I stepped out onto the porch, heart steady, camera rolling. "Lights on, Lydia," I said, loud enough for her to hear. "Let's make sure everyone sees you this time." Her headlights flared to life like she was accepting the challenge. The beam from her headlights cut across my lawn as she stepped out of the SUV, her phone still raised, filming. "You think you've won, Detective?" she said, her voice trembling somewhere between rage and fear. "You ruined my life over one mistake." "One mistake?" I shot back. "You stole a medical device meant for a sick kid. You lied, forged papers, and threatened half the neighborhood." I pointed toward the security camera above my garage. "And now you're on record trespassing again." Her eyes darted toward the camera, realizing too late that every second was being streamed live to the police network Harris had set up. "You can't do this," she screamed. "Already did," I said quietly. Within minutes, patrol cars rolled in again. No sirens this time, just silent authority. Harris stepped out, shaking his head. "Didn't take long, huh?" Karen, Lydia, tried one last desperate act, throwing her phone to the ground and shouting, "He set me up!" But Harris already had the footage synced to his tablet. Every lie, every threat, every piece of her game, all recorded. He read her rights once more, and this time she didn't fight. She just stood there, eyes empty as the cuffs clicked shut. The neighborhood watched from their porches, no one cheering, no one mocking. Just quiet relief. When they drove her away for good, I finally exhaled. My son came out to the porch holding my old detective badge. "You're kind of a superhero, Dad," he said softly. I smiled and knelt beside him. "Nah, just someone who doesn't like bullies." He grinned. "Same thing." I looked out across the street, the HOA sign still crooked from the chaos. For the first time in months, the air felt clean. No fake rules, no fake power, no fear. Just home. As the last police car disappeared, I whispered the same words I'd said years ago when I hung up my badge. I didn't fight for this country to be told I can't protect my own family. And this time, it meant more than ever. She stole my son's medical lifeline to prove her power. Now she's facing 20 years for grand theft and impersonation. Justice served.